This year marks 3 years since I released my first documentary, New Roots. I learned a lot from that experience, and I thought I would go back in this video and number 1, look at those lessons that I learned, and number 2, see how it still holds up today and what I would change if I were to do this film again. Let's get into it.
I thought it was easy, right? But we quickly realized as we started to grow here that the soil isn't the same. It takes a lot more time to make good soil. So it just took some adjustment. It wasn't as simple as just making a garden.
My film New Roots follows a farming family in the Kootenays region of BC who are dedicated to teaching their community and their kids about the importance of homegrown food. We filmed it over the course of, I think, 7 to 8 days throughout the summer of 2020 during the pandemic, and then spent most of the fall and winter getting the edit just right, and then we released it in the beginning of farmers market season in 2021. We also screened the film at a handful of film festivals, including Wild and Scenic Film Festival in California, Montreal Independent Film Festival, and Toronto Short Film Festival. But I didn't put too much effort into film festivals because honestly, it was my first film and I was mostly just treating this as a learning experience. It did also happen to get picked up by our local television station, which was great, and I learned a lot along the way. Going into the film, I really thought I wanted to make a film about the big picture of food production and bring it down to a local scale.
The world we live in now, we have this incredible global system of food production and transport. I think a lot of us take it for granted because it's so accessible to us.
And explain why regions like the Kootenays need to rely more on local food rather than food shipped from abroad and overseas. This was the theme that I really wanted to do, but I realized fairly early on that there was very likely a much deeper theme that I could explore in the film. And this leads me to my first lesson that I learned. Don't be afraid to change the direction of your film. I had read about this in various places, in various books and online before I started making this documentary, that you really have to let the story unfold in front of you and don't be so strict about your approach. Now this can be a challenge for me. I can be somewhat of a stubborn person sometimes and I like to go forward with my idea. But at the end of the day, I realized as I went through the edit that the personal side of the story was actually much more relatable than the big theme that I thought about at first. So I had a choice to make. Should I stick with my original vision and focus on that big picture theme? Or should I go deeper and talk a little bit more about the personal side of things from the farmer's perspective? In the end, I tried to do a little bit of both, and that was a little bit of a challenge. Did it work out? I really don't know. I think the film would have been stronger if I focused on one direction, probably the personal, rather than try to incorporate everything, but we can talk about that in a later section in this video. Now, before we get into the release, let's talk about what a traditional release strategy looks like. The first window usually are film festivals. Film festivals are where films go to get discovered and a lot of times bought and or acquired. Usually this would be about a 3 to 12 month window, although it seems to be shrinking a little bit now. And a lot of film festivals require some kind of premiere status, but usually they'll give small short films a break. They don't necessarily need a premiere. If you're working on a feature film, you might want to look at having a theatrical release. This usually requires a theatrical distributor to help you with, but this is generally the window that it takes place after a film festival run. Then you may have a period of time where you host community screenings, grassroots organizing events, educational screenings with partner organizations to get the film out into communities as a whole. You can have this at the same time as a theatrical or at the film festival window as well, or in the later stages. But it's a good window to include, especially if you're working on a film that's intended to make impact. You want to have partner organizations that you work with to get your film out into the world. Lastly, you'll have a consumer release window. So this can either go on transactional video on demand or TVOD, advertising video on demand, AVOD, which is things like YouTube, or subscription video on demand, which are things like Netflix or Amazon Prime. This tends to be the last window that you'll have, and this is where everyone can watch your film, either for free or for a price. As I mentioned at the beginning, we got into a couple film festivals, but that wasn't something that I banked on or relied upon because, like I said, this was my first film. I also knew that I didn't just want to put it on YouTube and Vimeo and hope that somebody finds it. Literally, I had no audience at the time. I still have no audience. So I knew that if I were to just put it up by myself, I might get 20 views, 30 views, might sit there for a period of time. So what I did instead was I approached a couple of the nonprofits in our community and asked if they would like to host a virtual event with me for the film. It was still virtual because in 2021, the pandemic was still ongoing and there was still a little bit of hesitancy to get back to in-person events and stuff like that. So we decided to do it virtually. We put it out to the community and to the members of both of the nonprofits that I worked with. And in the end, we had about 70 or 80 people show up to the virtual event. And the farmers came to the virtual event as well. And we had a really good conversation following the event and to talk about the issues that were presented in the film and local solutions to food sustainability. We also got a little bit of press in the local newspaper as well. And this I found far more beneficial than just putting it up on YouTube and hope that people watch. Even now, you can probably go see it right now. There's still only maybe 350 people, 380 people that have seen it on YouTube and maybe a little bit less on Vimeo. But I mean, I would probably be even less if I didn't get those initial 70, 80 views right off the bat. So all this is to say is to think about how you want to release your film. If you have the opportunity, partner with somebody local that can help you spread the film. And you should do this from an early stage. Don't wait until you're in post-production to do it. Now, to be clear, if you do have a little bit of an audience, there's absolutely nothing wrong with putting it up on YouTube. YouTube is one of the go-to places for films these days. A lot of people go to YouTube to watch documentaries. And in fact, for our third film, #MoCrazyStrong, we enlisted a festival consultant to help us with that film. And he said, listen, if you're just looking for views, if you're looking for eyeballs, YouTube is probably the best platform to go to for that. So don't discount YouTube as a release idea, but think about where else and how else you could release it as well. On the film festivals, we applied to about 15 film festivals. We didn't do a huge release because applying to film festivals costs a lot of money. And we did wind up getting into 3 of those festivals. So I was pretty happy with that turnout. Over the course of my next 2 documentaries, I learned a lot about applying to film festivals. So if you want to learn more about that, be sure to subscribe to this channel and I'll tell you more about it in future videos. Shortly after the premiere of our film on YouTube and Vimeo, which I released right after our community event, the local TV station reached out to me and asked me if they could have it on their TV station as well. And we said yes. We had a broadcast premiere, and it's, I believe, probably still to this day, it might be playing on that channel. So if you live in a smaller region where there's like a regional TV network, maybe you might want to reach out to them and see if they're interested in broadcasting it as well. If you get to bigger stages, broadcasters or YouTube channels may pay a licensing fee for them. It could range anywhere from $1,000 to $50,000 to $60,000, depending on the film, or maybe more. So that's something to possibly consider in your release strategy as well. After you've spent a few weeks in the edit, it's easy to lose sight on whether or not the film is making sense, whether or not your storyline makes sense, and if everything is working well together. This is where it's very important to have somebody that you trust to go through the film with you and point out what could be corrected, what is not clear, and where you can improve the film. Lucky for me, I have my fiance who is very detail-oriented and is very interested in helping and has a really good eye for things that I miss. She helped me with the edit quite a bit and really helped improve the film. So it's important that you keep an open mind when you're getting feedback. This can be very, 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 very hard, especially if you want your vision to come through and you have something particular in mind. Now, This doesn't mean that you need to take all the feedback somebody gives you. You want to maintain your vision and your artistry and your authorship. So consider which feedback you want to include and which feedback you don't want to include. Now, one of the most common errors I see when filmmakers are asking for feedback in their film is they're not specific about what they want to receive feedback on. To help you with this, I've put together a guide, the ultimate guide to asking for and receiving feedback on your film. This guide covers 50 plus questions that you can ask your reviewers to get the best feedback you can so that you make your film the best that it can be. To get the guide, go to the description below and you'll see it in the link down there. One of the most helpful pieces of feedback that I received after we finished was from a website called Shorts of the Week, which I believe now is called Shortsverse. For a small fee, I think it was $50 at the time that we applied, we got a very detailed one-page breakdown on their thoughts on the film and where we were in a right direction and where were we in a not so right direction. The feedback really helped me going into future projects. For example, they said that the technical skills were all great, nothing wrong on the technical side, but they felt that the film was a little bit longer than it needed to be and probably could have been shortened down a little bit. The platform is home to numerous award-winning and Academy Award-winning short films, so their curators know a thing or two about films, so it's a good place to go to get feedback. So, knowing all this, what would I do differently now if I were to do my first film again? The first thing I would do is I would have made a shorter film. At the time, I also didn't know that it's very difficult to get into film festivals with films above 15 or so minutes. I probably would have cut down the amount of shooting days I did and try to condense the film down to about 10 minutes or less. I probably would have started by cutting out the talking heads talking about the food security issue and focus more on the farmers themselves and their story. Number 2, I would have tried to include a few more scenes that didn't rely on typical documentary interviews or narration. I think the learning how to do interviews is critical in documentary, but the whole film doesn't have to have interviews over top or underneath whatever's on stage. I would have liked to make a couple more scenes of things going on. I did have one or two, like the farmer's market scene. I would try to make more complete scenes if I were to do this film again. Number 3, I would emphasize the main themes in my film more. I think this goes hand in hand with the first thing I would do differently. By focusing more on my main participants, I could more concentrate on the main theme of my film. Lastly, I think I should have spent a little bit more time trying to get it out into more community organizations and groups that have an interest in food security and food sustainability. I think creating a little bit more of an impact would have been nice with the film. Like I said, it was really just a lesson for me to learn how to make a film, but I could have put a little bit more effort into trying to get more people to see it. And definitely this is a key thing that I'm doing on all my films from now on. So with that, I would love to know what lessons you learned from your first film or what you took away from this video. Leave me a comment below and I will see you in the next one.